This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Place to Be Nation, welcome back to this special series brought to you by your good friends at Place to Be Nation's main event and placetobenation.com. I am Scott Criscolo from the Place to Be podcast and Place to Be Nation's main event and a myriad of other shows. Let me bring in my co-host on this fine series and the co-host of the main event and the co-host of the Kings of Sport. Someday maybe he'll have his own stage, like the person that's number one on our lists, the great S.D. Jones. No, I already did S.D. Jones. The Godfather, Nate Milton.
What is going on, Scotty? It is good to be back and continue our journey through the annals of WWE/WWF greatness and maybe even some WWF entries here along the way. So we've had some controversial picks. We've had some interesting feedback to our lists, and I can't wait to see what trouble we get into this week.
We're going to get into a lot of trouble, Brother Nate. Of course, it is part 4 of our of the main event's greatest WWE list, top 100. This is part 4, which means tonight we will go through numbers 70 to 61. And obviously, if you've been listening since part 1, we don't have to go through the whole rigmarole. You know what this is. You know what we've been doing. If you go to placetobenation.com, the master list, which was put together by, of course, all 118 of your ballots and our ballots, put together, it is on placetobenation.com, and we'll go along with it. So what we'll do is Nate, you will bat lead off this episode. Nate will give his number 70, I will give my number 70, and then we'll do the master list's number 70, and we'll see how close we are to a lot of things. Now, in terms of who we have. Now, the controversies, Nate, that you and I have had so far have mostly been omissions. There's a big omission on mine that's driving everybody bonkers, and I have a feeling one of the 10 I have tonight is going to drive people nuts. In fact, 2 of them. But I've got my argument all ready to go. So I am ready for the fight. Let's put it that way. Not with you, because I love you. I ain't going to fight with you. But as long as we have Bobo Brazil, right? It's all that's good. I watched Bobo Brazil today, actually.
We can't fight after that bonding moment we had last time with RVD. I feel like we're
yes. I know. We really can't do much better than that. Absolutely. So if you're just clicking on this one for the first time, stop. This is part 4. Check parts 1 through 3, where Nate and I counted down our 100 to 71. Listen to those first, and then come here. And we will, again, break it down. 10 wrestlers, 10 parts, all the way to number 1. And just to let everyone know, if you hadn't listened to part 3 yet, please do. But just to give you a quick recap, Nate and I both had Rob Van Dam at number 73, which was actually kind of cool. All right, so here we go. Numbers 70 to 61. Brother Nate, you lead it off. Who is your number 70?
You know, Scotty, I really like it when things that I do in my non-wrestling life kind of coincide with my wrestling life. And this week, I was watching a YouTube show called The Toys That Made Us. I don't know if you've seen the Netflix show.
Yes. I watched the first part. The first part was all Star Wars. It's awesome.
Yeah, they do. I think there's 4 so far. You got Star Wars, Barbie, G.I. Joe, and He-Man, and then they got 4 more coming out here pretty soon. But I watched the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe episode this week, and it was really fun, really informative if you're into toys from back in the day and the kind of the creative behind it. I suggest you check it out. The Toys That Made Us on Netflix. But I was watching He-Man, and he's a man's man, and I know his catchphrase was "I have the power," but you could also say he had the power of the punch, which leads us to my number 70, William Regal.
Wow. Okay, I like that pick. I like that pick a lot.
William Regal, to me, Scotty, he is somebody, of course he's got the accolades. He's got the longevity. He's two-time IC champ, four-time European champ, four-time tag champ. And I think maybe his biggest role, besides being a great technical wrestler in the ring, was the creativeness and the humor and the character work that we didn't know he had. Like, if you watched Regal in his early stint with the company as the man's man, the real man's man.
He's a man.
Yes.
Because a man's man drinks orange juice. So
man's man drinks orange juice and walks around with open flannel shirts.
That's right.
And I could never tell, like, is he just getting off the shift at the construction site to come wrestle here? But then again, that was like the era when everybody had to have a job, a side hustle. Like
right.
Bob Holly raced cars on the side. So no shame in construction work. But, we didn't see that type of character, though. And I don't think, we got a little glimpse of it in WCW when he was Sir William Regal.
Mm-hmm.
But, Lord Steven Regal. But when he came back to the WWE, it just clicked for me. And I thought there was something about him that always got me invested in a match. He was never your top guy, but he was always somebody that you could throw out there for 10, 15 minutes, have a good match, cut a good promo. He could do anything you needed him to do in the course of a show. And when you needed somebody to have gravitas, he could play that, as we saw when he was the commissioner. And he's now currently the commissioner of NXT. We see that gravitas, but he's also a guy who wasn't afraid to be the butt of a joke.
Right.
And one of my favorite Regal segments, Scott, was, I forget which pay-per-view it was on, but you had Teddy Long and Coach in the office, and Vince was there, and Crime Time came in, and they did their whole money, yeah routine, and for whatever reason, because Vince loves shucking and jiving, they shucked and jived around the room.
Yes.
And William Regal was shucking and jiving with the best of them. And I was like, you know what? I respect the dedication to the bit. So those are some of the reasons why William Regal, to me, Scotty, deserves a place on the list. He's not the first name that jumps off the page, but to me, he's a very important part of modern-day WWE.
There's no doubt. I am going to withhold my comments because I have him quite a bit higher on my list. So I will hold my comments on William Regal, but certainly a guy that belongs on the list. My number 70, we'll go back in time a little bit. He did shine on two different stages. He shined during the Federation era, and he actually became a surprisingly good character during the Attitude era. As a matter of fact, I thought, Nate, that they should have put a statue of him in front of the new ballpark down in Hotlanta, where the Braves are, because the Braves' new ballpark is actually where he's from. Cobb County, Georgia. My number 70 is the Big Boss Man.
Yes.
A Federation stalwart, and a guy who... I remember when he first came in very late '87, but really saw him in early to mid '88. Big fat guy, but a bullying prison guard. And then as time progressed, crowd kind of got into him, and by the end of '89 into '90, he was over. And not only was he over, but then he lost weight. He was looking for earthquake the Boss Man standards, pretty thin. So, and he was just one of the most over guys, and I was actually legitimately disappointed. I mean, I know we ended up getting a great match at SummerSlam that year in 1991, but I was legitimately disappointed when he didn't win the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania 7 against Perfect. I really thought he was going to, because that was a whole storyline. He was mowing through the Heenan family. He had a great match with, I believe it was the Barbarian at the Rumble, which was tremendous. And then he was supposed to beat the Crown Jewel, which was Perfect. And that ended up being the official last night of Bobby as a manager. Because remember, then he became pretty much a full-blown announcer. So, And then he was gone for a while, went to WCW, was the Guardian Angel and the Boss and a bunch of other annoying nicknames. And then he came back as Vince's muscle as we began the Attitude Era, and then he cooked Pepper and so forth and so on. So here's a guy who transcended two generations, transcended two eras of WWE. And was one of the most over guys. It's a rarity to be one of the most over guys in the company. And there's another guy on my list later on down the line that's also fits this bill. One of the most over baby faces ever without ever having to win a belt. Now he did end up, I believe, winning the tag title. He won the hardcore title a boatload of times, but I believe he won the tag title once. I think wasn't it him and Shamrock? I think had it in like late '98, early '99. But other than that, like in the zenith of his babyface run in the Attitude Era, in the Federation era, he never won a belt. So because that's so huge. So my number 70 is the prison guard from Cobb County, Georgia. Respect the law and order, the Big Boss Man.
That's a solid pick, and much like you with William Regal, I'm not going to give away all my thoughts on Boss Man because I have him on my list as well. But yeah, to me, I think we talked about this back in the day with the WrestleFest game. Boss Man was always one of my go-to guys.
Right.
Just because I like, for a big guy, he could move and that sliding out of the ring to deliver the uppercut. That's still one of my favorite spots in wrestling.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I loved it. Yes, I agree. So yeah, no, you got plenty of, we'll get your chance. And I'm glad you have him on your list at all. We got him a little higher. All right, now let's check the master list. What did Place to Be Nation have as their number 70? Well, this guy's not on my list for, I don't want to say political reasons. I don't want to use that term, but he was on 55 ballots. He was as high as 5. He was as low as 92. Jimmy Snuka. And we all know how moderately controversial that pick is based on people's thinking.
Yes.
So, and that has to do, of course, with somebody else that might be on the master list a little bit further up the line. So we'll see. I probably would have put Snuka on, but if I didn't put one guy on the list, I certainly couldn't put the other guy just because the crimes happened 30 years apart or whatever. So, or 25 years apart, whatever it is. Anyway, the Place to Be Nation. So number 70, Nate had William Regal. I had the Big Boss Man. Place to Be Nation's list had Jimmy Snuka. All right, number 69, Val Venis. No, I'm only kidding.
Nice.
At number 69 on my list,
Rob Gronkowski.
Well, this joke might this might actually be a joke just as close. A legend. It's funny, Nate, because we were talking about WWF guys. My next, I'll even kind of tip my hat. My next two picks go back to that era, but we'll save my second pick when we get there. My number 69 pick, the inaugural Intercontinental Champion and the Godfather, well, the other Godfather of the Royal Rumble. My number 69, yes, start all the jokes you'd like, Pat Patterson. All innuendo aside, Pat is a legend, period. Yeah. Tremendous worker, worked all territories, tremendous tag team wrestler. His tag work in previous territories with Ray Stevens is legendary. He had a great match with Sergeant Slaughter in '81 in WWE, a street fight, where he wore the infamous I Love New York, not infamous, but the famous I Love New York t-shirt. So, and after that, he was a great announcer. He was the referee of the main event of WrestleMania 1. And even in the 2000s when, he was a stooge and he had track marks on his underwear, he fit everywhere. And as a matter of fact, he did commentary, and I just realized this, Nate, because I've been watching those Raws. When they had the tournament in '96 because Ahmed Johnson got hurt, he actually commentate, or did he official? Oh, he refereed the finals of the tournament between Farouk and Mark Mero, which I totally forgot about. And he's just a legend. He's a legend. Tremendous wrestler, the inaugural Intercontinental Champion, and one of the glue guys of this company, Pat Patterson.
Yeah, as as deserving as he is for his in-ring contributions, like what he did behind the scenes might have been even more impressive for all those years.
I agree. And I think that's, I mean, obviously we have to look at more of his wrestling career, which was exceptional, but I think a little bit has to be considered. It's kind of the same thing as people putting Bobby Heenan and managers in here. I think Pat, not only as a good wrestler, but Pat you need a little sliver to put him in for his contributions behind the scenes as a road agent, a booker, obviously the godfather of the Royal Rumble. As a matter of fact, on a side note, if anybody hadn't watched it, the WWE 24 special on the women, the weekend of the Rumble, he booked their Rumble, which is why that Rumble was so fucking great. So there it is. My number 69 is Pat Patterson. Brother Nate, the floor is yours.
All right. My pick for number 69 is somebody that I know a lot of people love. I know a lot of people like. And to me, he's just, he's all right. You know, I can see why people would be into him. But he has been saddled with a disease called terrible booking, and that is
Bray Wyatt.
Probably something that.
Oh no.
Well, we could do a whole show about Bray Wyatt's booking.
That's true.
But I think, you know, being in this position is probably something that, you know, makes him crazy, makes him frustrated, maybe makes him a lunatic. Because my 69 is Dean Ambrose.
Really?
Yeah, Dean Ambrose to me is somebody who the story around him has never matched up with, except for the Shield. You know, let's take the Shield out of this. I'm talking about Dean's solo run. The story around him has rarely matched his abilities. You know, I think Dean is a fine worker in the ring. I think he's really good on the mic, but for whatever reason, somebody got it in their mind that this guy was crazy. He's a lunatic. And that became the one thing that we wanted to focus on. And we had some bad programs with Baron Corbin. We had a WrestleMania program with Brock Lesnar that didn't really live up to what I thought it could be. We just mentioned Bray Wyatt. I thought that program with Bray and Dean was so much less than the sum of his parts. But, you know, I don't want to throw too much shade on Dean because, like I said, this dude is good. I really enjoyed his run with the Shield. I think that is one of the better factions in recent memory. There's a guy that's a two-time IC champ. He's won the U.S. title. You know, he's somebody who is always in that upper mid-card / lower main event tier, and he deserves it because he's good. But for whatever reason, the story around him is what's holding him back, and what I think, at least in my opinion, on my list, is what keeps him from being, you know, in that top 50 with guys that really stand the test of time. I think he's just outside of that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I don't have him on my list. He's my least favorite Shield member. However, I think in a few years, if he keeps working hard, I would have no problem putting him back. Here's my take on Dean. I think Dean was great until the Stone Cold podcast. And then I think Stone Cold kind of exposed him a little bit for not taking the business as seriously as he should. I think he did the hype of being John Moxley and the hype of, hey, everybody thinks I'm the next Roddy Piper. And I don't think he was trying as hard as he should have.
Right.
And I think Stone Cold called him out for it. And that's why I think he hasn't been the same. Now, his run as WWE champion in 2016, you know, when he won the belt, he cashed in the Money in the Bank. He had a good run that year. He won he won the big match at Battleground and everything, feuded with AJ. I thought was really good. And I think in a couple of years, if we end up doing this again, I think that I would put him on my list. But right now, I think he's still missing something that in a few years maybe would put him on my list. But
to me, he's kind of, and this is going to sound like a crazy comparison, but this is essentially kind of the Place to Be Nation Hall of Fame, and he feels very much like a Randall Cunningham type figure. Like somebody that had all the talent and the abilities, but for whatever reason, it just didn't quite connect all the way to make him legendary.
Right.
Like, I love Randall Cunningham.
I love Randall too.
But to me, he's just like a cut below, you know, those all-time quarterbacks.
He directed the most prolific offense in the last 30 years. those 1998 Vikings.
Yeah.
I mean, they won 15 games and scored like 500 and something points. And had Morten Andersen not finally missed like one field goal. Yeah, and had he not like missed like his only field goal the whole freaking year, they'd have probably crushed the Broncos in the Super Bowl. Maybe.
Well,
maybe. Would have happened. Good pick, though, Nate. Good pick. Now, Place to Be Nation's number 69 pick is actually a lot closer to you than to me. He was on 78 ballots. He was as high as 13 and as low as 98. Kevin Owens. Who's on the screen right now as we're recording. Yeah, I did not have Kevin Owens on my list. But we'll see. Maybe he's on yours. We'll see. All right, Brother Nate, you are up. You're number 68.
All right, this is a guy who, in ring, apart from appearance, maybe is as far away from Kevin Owens as you can get. He's also, from a time frame point of view, probably as far away from Kevin Owens as you can get because he's a former WWF Tag Team Champion. He was one of the first big special attractions, and to me, he kind of laid the groundwork for people like Andre the Giant, Gorilla Monsoon, and King Kong Bundy. And that's my man, Haystacks Calhoun.
Wow. Interesting. From what was he from? Pigeon Shit, Arkansas, or something? He wasn't Mudlick, Kentucky. He was from somewhere in Arkansas, Pigeon Fork or Winged Foot or something like that.
I know 90% of our listeners might have zero recollection of Haystacks, and that's fine because I obviously wasn't around during Haystacks' heyday, but I've watched a lot of his work either on YouTube or through old classic collections, and he's not great in the ring, but there is something to seeing a dude that big back then. And he had a personality. He had, you talk about Pat Patterson being the godfather of the Royal Rumble. I think Haystacks might have been kind of the godfather of the Hillbilly Jim, Godwin's kind of motif of the good old country boy.
Yep.
Haystacks might have been the one to kind of first bring that into the national spotlight. But yeah, he was a big dude who wrestled like a big dude would back then. But he was fun, and you could tell the crowd was into it. Just seeing the spectacle of this big dude. Like I said, man, he's one of the biggest special attractions ever, literally and figuratively. And I figured I'd give some shine to one of the old timers that probably won't get a lot of love from some of our more modern members of the Place to Be Nation family.
All right, that's not a bad pick at all. I mean, Haystacks is a guy who, and he was kind of the precursor. He was kind of the sloppier precursor to Andre. I don't know if he ever got the total shine that Andre got, but still, he was a big dude, big baby face, loved by everybody. It was when you said former WWF Tag Team Champion, I was almost guaranteed you were going to say Rene Goulet, but maybe not. But I know there's a few guys I think would have had him on their list. But anyway, I like that pick. No, I like that pick a lot. My number 68 is a guy that was around similar to Haystacks Calhoun. He also was a former champion, but he, Brother Nate, is a former WWF heavyweight champion. From Paradise Valley, Arizona. He's too sweet to be sour. Superstar Billy Graham.
Yes.
All right. We could say right off the bat that his work rate was not great. We know that. We can admit that. That's fine. But you just did Haystacks Calhoun, so that's okay too. But let's be honest. Superstar Billy Graham, as much as he had a lot of demons in his life, this was a guy who was the first legitimate great bad guy attraction. Think about the heels, Nate, the world champion heels before Superstar Billy Graham. Both of them were transitions. Ivan Koloff was a transition from Bruno to Pedro, and Stan Stasiak was a transition from Pedro to Bruno, pretty much. Now, you could argue that Superstar Billy Graham was a transition from Bruno to Bob, but he was champion for a year, and he had a legendary, tremendous feud with Dusty Rhodes. And all three of their matches, 2 of them for the title, and then 1 was after he lost to Backlund, and they had the rematch. Why am I brain farting? No, it wasn't a strap match. The Texas Death Match. Texas Death Match I had at the Garden, that was Dusty's win back against Billy Graham after Graham lost the belt to Backlund. But Superstar Billy Graham had a $1 million body, which nobody back then had. I mean, think about it. Think of all the guys back in the day. Bruno was just a big, he was a thick brick shithouse. All those guys were. Nobody looked like Superstar Billy Graham. Nobody.
Yeah, I just mentioned Haystacks Calhoun. Like, Haystacks about as far away from Superstar as you can get.
Exactly. He had the tights. He used to wear the Arizona State shirt. He had the awesome, auburn-colored, autumn-colored tights, like brown and orange. Yep. And the guy knew his stuff. He knew how to be a great heel. He knew how to draw the ire of the fans. He had the Grand Wizard as his manager. I mean, he was a guy who got people to love Bruno even more, even though at the time no one knew it, but Bruno was never winning the belt back. And it was a great setup eventually in 78 when he would obviously drop the strap to Bob. But I think there's no doubt that Superstar Billy Graham needs to be remembered as one of the tremendous heels in our history. He did go down a funky path, in the 80s, but he came back, wrestled a little bit, wasn't great, but was a great manager. He was a moderately decent announcer, and he is in the WWE Hall of Fame. And his contributions in the 70s to, bringing the guys like Jesse the Body, creating the mold that would eventually be Hulk Hogan.
Yep.
Those can't be, if you're copied by arguably 2 of the greatest personalities of the 80s, one of them arguably the greatest of all time, you've done your job. So, number 68 for me is Superstar Billy Graham, simply because he was the first great heel in WWF history. Brother Nate.
Yeah, solid pick. And like you said, maybe his greatest contribution is showing the path for Jesse and for Hulk Hogan, who, if not the biggest star of all time, certainly the biggest star of the 80s, which was one of the hottest eras for the business. So, and then you talk about being able to talk people into the arena and get people to hate him. Like, that's not a skill that is, it looks easier than it is to be that type of heel that can get people riled up. And like you said, man, he was a trendsetter and a trailblazer. So, yeah, I got no problem with that pick.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So, you did your 68. All right. Here was PlaceToBeNation.com's 68. Your number 68, fans. Yours. Here we go. She was on 81 ballots. She was as high as 18, as low as 98. Charlotte. I'm going to withhold my comments because she will be discussed in this episode.
Oh, yeah. I don't really have a problem with this because she was on my list last week or last episode. So, the nation's got her a little bit higher than I do, but yeah, that's fine. She's certainly out of the current crop of women. She is the most fully rounded, and that's not a pun. She's the most fully rounded character on the roster.
No, you picked the most fully rounded, and that was Haystacks Calhoun. So, all right. So there we go. So that was Place to Be Nation's number 68 pick was Charlotte. All right. I believe it's my turn. Let's make sure we do this right because the last episode, what was it, 2 episodes ago? I think I got us totally flummoxed. So, all right. My turn here. All right. My number 67, another guy who, just based on longevity, consistency, and just being good at what he did. And he also is credited for being a good businessman. And the reason he's a good businessman is because he knows who did and didn't pay their taxes. Number 67, Irwin R. Shyster, a.k.a. Mike Rotundo. I'm going to say Mike Rotundo in general. Loved him. One of my first favorite tag teams as a kid was U.S. Express. Great worker. But he did the reason I have him on my list is not just because he's a good worker, cut great promos, but he made a good business decision. Crockett wanted both of them, him and Barry Windham, back in 85, 86. Crockett, Mike Rotundo told Crockett, well, all right, I'll leave, but I'm gonna fulfill my dates with Vince, and then I'm leaving. And it may not be for quite a few months. Barry Windham said, Fungool, I'm going, because they're going to make me a world champion. Well, guess what? Barry Windham left, made a poor business decision, and he ended up being the Widowmaker and the Stalker when he came back. Mike Rotundo did a good business decision, and when he returned in 1991, he was IRS. And IRS would be an enduring character for the next 4 years, or almost 5 years, deep into 95. He was a great wrestler. He was consistent. Put over who needed to be put over, won matches when he needed to, cut great promos. He was just rock solid, top to bottom. And he was a glue guy. And I'm sure a lot of people's top 100 lists have glue guys. He's a glue guy. And, we don't want to go outside WWE, but of course he was former TV champion. He was a member of one of my favorite stables, and I'm sure one of your favorite as well, Nate, the Varsity Club.
Yep.
And
Varsity Club 2000.
And Varsity Club 2000, yes. So, he is a guy that's just rock solid top to bottom, and he is my number 67.
It's a good pick. And spoiler alert, I've got Mike Rotunda floating around somewhere on my list in the future. Will it be this week? Will it be next week? Will it be the week after that? You'll have to stick around and find out. Looking forward to it. All right, Brother Nate, you're 67. All right. Now, I'm not a podcast monogamous, Scotty, as much as I love you and everybody here.
Yes, you call me a side piece. I was a side piece. I wasn't even a mistress.
Well, see, that's because Marcus Vanderberg is my wife.
Yes, Marcus is your wife.
In podcast terms.
Yep.
Brian Mann from Post Wrestling would probably be my mistress.
Okay.
And then you are the side piece.
I'm a gym rat. I'm like I'm somewhere on your Rolodex when you're going across the country.
You're like a Whoopi Goldberg in Sister Act, and I'm Harvey Keitel. I'm giving you a fur coat with my wife's name on it.
This package says for Marcus with love. Oh, God.
But all of that, Scotty, is to say, if I were doing a show with John Pollock from Post Wrestling, this would probably be the time where he'd push the Uncle Cracker button, and we'd hear, "Ayo, you dealing with the X Factor."
Oh, boy.
Because the next name on my list is none other than X-Pac, a.k.a. the 1-2-3 Kid, a.k.a. Sean Waltman.
All right. Okay. I'm already going to tell you right now, he's on my list, maybe the next episode. So I'll withhold my comments, but please, floor is yours.
Yes. Now, this is a guy who, despite his size, which was still a fairly big thing when he broke into the WWF, he excelled. And, I think part of that is due to, of course, obviously, his connections behind the scenes. But you can't deny that this dude was one hell of a wrestler. You're talking about 4-time tag champ, 2-time light heavyweight champ, or whatever, that's worth. Also a cruiserweight champ after the WCW acquisition. Of course, he's probably best known for his run with DX, but let's not forget how he kind of burst onto the scene in that feud with Razor Ramon when he was the 1-2-3 Kid.
Yep.
And this was a guy that, before I was, kind of a quote-unquote smart fan and was on the internet and whatnot, I liked this guy back in, I want to say, Global Wrestling in Texas.
Yeah.
When he was the Lightning Kid.
Yep. 91, 92.
He was the Lightning Kid. I just was like, yo, this guy is the best. This guy is the greatest. And then when he got to that big stage, unlike so many other people that came from different territories that weren't used to their fullest potential, he was made to look like a star. And towards the end of his run, he had that X-Pac heat, but he was still getting reactions. So there's something to be said for that. Obviously, he had a lot of success with DX. So yeah, man, to me, X-Pac, aka Sean Waltman, is somebody that when you write the history of the WWE, you got to have at least a chapter on D-Generation X, and he was a big part of their success. X Factor was not so much of a success, but it happened, and he was there. And I like the theme song. So Sean Waltman gets a spot on my list, Scotty.
Okay, all right. I don't disagree with that pick. I like it a lot. I have him a little higher, so we'll leave it there. All right, Place to Be Nations 67. Just like my last couple of picks, they went back to the WWF era. 72 ballots, as high as 9, as low as 98. Former WWF champion Pedro Morales.
Okay,
So
good.
So they had him at 67. Okay. We'll see if I have him that high. We'll see.
That's a bit surprising for me. Kind of seeing how the list has gone so far from the nation, and it kind of skews a little bit younger. So I'm glad to see Pedro got some love.
I'm glad he got love too. I am too, actually. Yes. So, all right, Brother Nate, you are up with your number 66.
All right, and if you don't like this pick, Scotty, all I can say is drop and give me 20, maggot. Because I am going with Pro Wrestling Illustrated's most hated wrestler of 1991, the star of G.I. Joe, and the master of the Cobra Clutch, Sergeant Slaughter.
That's a tremendous pick.
Yes, Sergeant Slaughter to me was like he worked well as a babyface, the All-American, the G.I. Joe guy, but when he had that flip during the Iraq War, and sided with General Adnan. And was like, that might have been my favorite Hulk Hogan feud in the WWF that didn't involve Randy Savage. Might have been.
Okay.
Because like I love the idea of the guy that represented America turning his back on America and fighting the new guy that represents America. And Slaughter had the chops to pull off being a hateable American turncoat. And, he did other things besides this particular run, but this was where he won his championship. This was where, to me, he was the most fully realized version of his character. And I really enjoyed the Iraqi sympathizer, Sergeant Slaughter. Of course, he would continue with the company, both in front of the camera and behind the scenes. Most notably, he was like the on-screen enforcer for a bunch of matches. I think at one time he was a commissioner during the DX days. But yeah, to me, the height of Sergeant Slaughter's run was that feud against Hogan, because it was like, this is the guy I actually saved box tops, Scotty, from the or UPC codes from the G.I. Joe toys and mailed in so I could get not only my limited edition Refrigerator Perry figure, but my limited edition Sergeant Slaughter from G.I. Joe the movie. So, like, this guy was already a big star to me as a kid outside of wrestling. But then when you put him in this politically charged angle, an angle that probably wouldn't get made today, I thought he excelled. And so to me, yeah, Sergeant Slaughter is one of those all-timers for me.
I will have Sergeant Slaughter somewhere on this list. I have to double check because it's been so long. I don't think I mentioned him because I have a terrible memory.
The Cobra Clutch was a great finisher. Like, how many of us didn't practice that on the playground with our friends when we were playing wrestling?
I know, right? I don't think, and it was easy to do.
Yep.
And let me see. I have to look back at my. He is on my list. But a little higher up. Actually, quite a bit higher up. But
okay,
I will save my comments. But obviously, he's one of the most. He's tremendous. One of the greatest of all time, and a Hall of Famer. So we will leave it at that. And I will give my comments when I come to him. My number 66 is a guy that I kind of haggled with this one, actually. When I made my list a billion times and wrote it and rewrote it, I would put him on, take him off, put him on, take him off. I had him in the 90s, I had him in the 50s, I had him in the 70s, I had him in the 40s, I had him all over the place. I settled him in on 66 because Another guy that was a glue guy during the era of WWE that not many people were crazy about. But he was a solid heel, a former Intercontinental Champion, a former Tag Team Champion. And yes, Brother Nate, in, less than 3 weeks, we can call him Hall of Famer. Jeff, J-A-R-R-E-T-T. My number 66 is Jeff Jarrett. And I battled with this one. But then I said to myself, as I'm you know what did it for me for him? Watching the Raws that Justin and I are doing on PlaceToBeNation.com. We're doing the Raw refreshes or Raw rewatches. And I watched all of 94, 95, and he was a glue guy for the heels in 95 when the roster was kind of trash. He was a great Intercontinental Champion. He was a good heel. The vignettes were great where he was trying to bust into all the country music offices and everything. It was great. It was legitimately great. And I was happy with putting him on there. He made me. I felt satisfied. And now that I know he's back in good standing with the company and he's going to the Hall of Fame. He was a great heel.
We both had Jarrett on the list because I had him a little bit lower than you, but I'm glad we both recognized Jeff, if for nothing else, being one of the few people to stick Vince McMahon up for money.
Yes, exactly. He was one of the last of Vince's Cold Wars, and then he kind of evolved and became that awesome, short-haired heel, and don't piss me off, and shoving women around. And now we're kind of glad that he put Moolah in the figure four. He should have broke her leg, but he I don't know. To me, he's just rock solid. And I'm glad we both had him on the list. So my number 66 is JAFF, and he's a Place to Be Nation alumni because Justin and I had him on the Place to Be podcast. So that's also makes it very special. All right. PlaceToBeNation.com's number 66, your pick, listeners, that you had on your ballots. Another she, Nate.
Oh.
88 ballots. She was as low as 98, as high as 10. Trish Stratus. So, okay. Good pick. I think I had her already. Yep. So, good pick there by PlaceToBeNation.com. Seems like the 60s are where a lot of the women are. Very interesting. All right. My number 65. All right. I almost feel guilty putting this guy this low, but as a matter of fact, when Greedy was working on his list, him and I had a few long conversations about this guy. Because if this was greatest wrestlers of all time, everywhere, ever, this guy would be in my top 10, maybe my top 5. But sadly, because of the short time that he was in WWE and the short time he was in his prime in WWE, it's kind of hard to put him higher than where I have him. He is a former Intercontinental Champion, and he was in one half of still my favorite match of all time. My number 65, The Dragon, Ricky Steamboat. Do you agree with me, though? If you have on your list, I'd rather, obviously preserve your comments. But if this was greatest wrestlers of all time, period, he's probably somewhere for me between 4 and 8.
Yeah, to me, if this is greatest wrestlers of all time, period, he's in my top 5 probably.
Yeah, but sadly, really his run was from 85 to mid-88, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
You can't really count when he came back in 91 when he had the stupid wing, the dragon armpit things, and that was ludicrous. And you could argue,
if you're going to make the case for Steamboat, it's pretty much almost like the case for AJ.
Yep.
Except the one thing in Steamboat's favor, like you said, is that all-time classic match, a match many people consider the greatest match of all time against Savage.
Exactly. And as much as AJ has had tremendous matches, he hasn't had that WWE match yet, which he could. I mean, he probably will. But again, we won't get into it. Well, trust me, AJ will be coming up the conversation again very shortly. So, but yeah, I mean, for me, Steamboat, just for that quick 3 or 4 year stretch, was arguably one of the 2 or 3. And we've seen him plenty of times when JR and I have done our Vintage Vault refreshes of these MSG house shows. I mean, he made Honky look like $1 million to be honest with you. So, but again, the only reason he's this low is because it's very hard to put him higher when he really only had 3 good years, 85, 86, and 87. And that was it, unfortunately. But he's on the list because he's that good, and he had a top 2 all-time company match. All-time company match. So he is my number 65, Brother Nate.
All right, Scotty. My 65 is a guy that is here for right now because I think up until this point, this is maybe as high as I can place him realistically. But if the rumors are to be believed and he shows up the night after WrestleMania and engages in some more mayhem, I think, if we do this list 10 years from now, he might be in the top 50.
Okay.
And that is Bobby Lashley.
Really? Okay. It's an interesting pick. Okay.
And the reason that this is kind of it's a mix of recognition for what he did in the company during his first run, but also a nod to the future in a way, because anybody that's seen him in his TNA run knows that this is a different guy. This is a guy that, and maybe it's the MMA influence, but this is a guy who looks better in the ring, is a guy that actually can cut promos, which was his Achilles heel during his initial WWE run. And I can't wait to see what they do with this guy if he does debut the night after Mania. But talking about Bobby and his initial WWE run, he was somebody who I think, had he not, gotten hurt, this probably would have been, and I don't want to disrespect Big E because I think Big E's the next black world heavyweight champion. But I think Bobby Lashley would have got there.
I think he would have too. I like Lashley a lot, actually. He's not on my list, but I like Lashley a lot. I think he put over his power moves. I thought he had a good power move set.
Yeah.
He would look like $1 million. I mean, he was credible physique. I liked the feud with Vince. I thought it was cool. The only problem is the same problem Brock had in 2004. He didn't realize that you kind of got to pay your dues back. And I think he got pissed off when he lost at the 2007 Bash to Cena and said, well, what do you mean? I thought this was my, my ascendancy to greatness, and no.
Yeah.
And he didn't have the patience to wait, and he left. That's my only knock on him, is he didn't have the maturity level to be able to understand what was going on at that time. And maybe now he does. I mean, he bounced around, did some MMA, and of course he spent a considerable time of the last several years in Impact, so as a champion. And
he's really good. Like he might have been one of the best things about TNA the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think his maturity level, I think Brock's maturity level has made him great since he came back in 2012.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think Lashley's the same. So
this to me, like, he was almost in a Roman Reigns position where, due to the way he looked, he was getting, maybe a bit more than he could handle at the time. But I think, all things considered, attitude aside, whether it was the time in ECW, time as U.S. champ, or the Battle of the Billionaires, like, I thought Bobby Lashley was solid in the ring, and in terms of his character, there wasn't a lot there in terms of mic work, but in terms of a big, physical, imposing presence, he did what they asked him to do. So, and I'm, like I said, man, this is a little bit half for the past and half for the future, because I think if they allow him to go out there and be the new Bobby Lashley and try not to shoehorn him into old Bobby Lashley, they got a hell of a worker on their hands.
I agree 100%. I'm pumped, actually, to see him come back. I actually am. I like a good...
Like him and Brock, that's money right there.
Oh, I want to see those two hoss each other. That's going to be fantastic. I think Lashley Roman, I think, would be a lot of fun, too.
Yeah.
I absolutely do. Great pick, Nate. I didn't have him on my list only because I can't get the funk out of him kind of, throwing a tantrum and walking out. But I hated that with Brock, too. We'll see if Brock's renaissance put him on his list, because I wouldn't have put him on my list for a long time, but we'll see. All right. What did PlacementNation.com have at number 65? What did you listeners put at 65? Well, this guy was on 82 ballots, He was as low as 99, as high as 14. I know he's on my list. The Iron Sheik. Sheiky baby! So, I know he's on my list later on down the line. So, all right. Number 64, Brother Nate. Floor is yours.
Well, I just have one thing to say to you, Scotty.
Yes.
Senor Criscola, prepare the field for battle.
Yes! Yes!
64 on my list is the Woken Warrior himself, Matt Hardy.
All right. Can I pull Bray Wyatt out of the lake of reincarnation?
Yes, Leah. Let's talk about this. Even though this happened after the period where we were compiling our lists, he actually managed to have a good showing of Ultimate Deletion, which is something I didn't think would be able to happen. And it wasn't as good as the TNA stuff, but for a company that can be sometimes so tight with characters and ideas they didn't come up with, I thought it came off as good as it could on Monday night.
I quickly, just to go off the path for a minute, I liked the Impact one better only because there were more people in it. Remember we had Spud and we had, the Express Rock and Roll.
It was almost like a whole universe as opposed to just these two guys.
Exactly. That was my only, but overall I thought Monday night was good. I liked it a lot. But the only reason I thought Impact's was a little better was because there were just more people. Rockstar Spud and all those other, humps. I was fine. And, we still had, Abyss or whatever and that whole crew. I was totally fine with it.
Yeah. So, Matt Hardy's somebody that has, he's got the longevity. I think, 15 years total with the company?
Yep.
Multiple tag team title reigns. To me, this is a guy who was a great tag team worker. You can make the argument he's one of the 10 or 15 best tag team workers in the history of the company. His singles run, it was serviceable. It had some peaks and valleys. But I think, and this, I don't know if this is damning with faint praise or praising with faint damnation, Scotty, but I think Matt Hardy is, in Marty Jannetty's wildest dreams, what he could have become if he wasn't battling all those demons.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody that is respected, somebody that, wasn't, like Matt never went on to be the star that his brother was, much like Marty could never be the star Shawn was. But Matt's got a hell of a career. He's going to be a Hall of Famer in his own right.
Yes.
And feud with Bray, like he managed to get a quality match, an angle out of a feud with Bray Wyatt, which is a modern day miracle. So maybe for that reason alone, I gotta show love to Matt Hardy.
All right. I like that pick. We'll see if I have him on my list. We'll see if his brother's on my list. Because both of them, you think they're a package deal. But I'm kind of glad you broke them up, Nate, because I think a lot of people may not have thought of it that way to put him in there. All right, are you ready? You might want to duck. This might get ugly.
Is this a James Ellsworth pick?
Yes. Yes. That's exactly who it is. It's Gilbert.
Any man with two hands and is willing to fight can make the list.
Yeah. My number 64, she, I liked her the minute she walked down the aisle, the first time I saw her. And she has not disappointed me once since I watched her. And I just watched her entire collection on the WWE Network. It's like I think it's the only collection I've watched. That and Batista's. The only collections I literally watched from beginning to end. And I was pumped when I saw her live at the Royal Rumble. And she is going to make an incredible moment on April 8th in New Orleans. My number 64 is Asuka. And I know what everyone's going to say. They're already saying it. What the fuck, dude? Asuka's been here, 2 years, 2.5? She's been here just as long as AJ. Why are you screwing? Why? Well, I know. I knew it. The minute I typed her name down, I knew that's what I was going to get. She's been here. Well, I'm ready for all of you. I'm ready. Very simple. She's a woman. It's very simple. Okay? The template is smaller. Okay? I love AJ, guys. I do. I seriously do. And if, just like we talked about Steamboat, if we did a top 100 greatest of all time ever, AJ would probably be no lower than 15. Probably. Of all time. Mind you. All time. Think of all time. And that's talking Japan, everywhere. He'd probably be, in my list, no lower than 15. Probably top 10. But, as much as he's had a great run, the competition for greatest of all time is just too stiff. And his template is just too small. In Asuka's case, you're talking about a much smaller template. If you go back all the way to Wendy Richter, Brother Nate, and believe it or not, she's not my highest rated girl. She's not my highest rated woman. I got one higher in this episode. I have one higher than her. But if you look at the template of women's wrestlers since Wendy Richter and Leilani Kai, your girl, there are not many move for move better than her.
Nope.
Period. That's why she belongs on the list. Because in the short time she's been here, she is better than 90% of any women that have ever wrestled in this company. And what hinders AJ is that his template is too big. You're talking about hundreds and hundreds of guys. So, yes, is he better than most of them? Yeah. But in terms of the 100 I picked, what they have on him is longevity in the company. In Asuka's case, the template is much smaller. She was able to climb the ladder faster. Period. For me.
Interesting.
That's my explanation. That's my explanation. Time. And the template. I'm going to use that word to death, kind of like I use formatics to death, which I've now put in, which is now going to be added to Webster's dictionary. But that is why. So before anybody bites my head off, there's my explanation. You know what's going to happen, Brother Nate, which happens all the time when people listen to these podcasts. They hear me say something they disagree with, and before they even listen to the next friggin' word, I get a Facebook message or a Facebook post biting my head off before they even continue listening. So keep listening. That is,
and if you do want to bite Scotty's head off, you can find him on Twitter at Scott Christopher.
Exactly. You know where I'll be. It's next to N8 Mosaic or whatever. I don't even know. I can't even remember yours. I just see your face, and that's all that matters. But that's what it comes down to. If you look in the grand scheme of things, Asuka is better than 90% of the women that have ever wrestled for WWE. Period. End of story. She rarely has a lousy match, and she finds different ways to beat you. That's one thing I love about Asuka. She's got multiple ways to beat you. She takes a pretty good beating, which we didn't see much of in NXT, but fortunately, I know you kind of are 50-50 on this. Fortunately, we've seen more of since she's been on Raw, which I think is what we needed, and I think we'll see it on SmackDown too. SmackDown Live too. Everything works with her. Everything for me. So she is my number 64.
That's not a bad pick, Scott.
Thank you.
I think there are going to be some people that are borderline. Like AJ was borderline for me, but ultimately, the way he wrapped up last year just kind of pushed him over the edge for me.
Okay.
But there's an argument to be made for both him and Asuka, and I think I got no problem with Asuka, and I think. Again, if this was a list we were doing 5 to 10 years from now, Asuka be in my top 50 easy. So I don't have any problem with Asuka being on your list.
Oh, and if we did this list 5 years from now, AJ will probably be in my top 10, maybe even my top 5, because that's 5 more years of him putting on average 4.5 star matches all the time. He gets more time, and he will usurp a lot of guys I put on this list. He just didn't have enough time by the time we did this. Simple as that. Agree, disagree. That's what makes this fun, right? Oh,
part of the magic.
I just got a Haystacks Calhoun doll thrown at me. Sure, pick the one with the most plastic. All right. By the way, I'm not picking on your pick, Nate. I love Haystacks Calhoun. I'm just saying because his figure would be the largest. Next to Earthquake, maybe. All right. PlaceToBeNation.com's number 64. This is a little interesting. This guy was on 86 ballots, Brother Nate. He was as low as 99, as high as 16. The Architect, Seth Rollins.
Okay.
Have you noticed that a lot of newer guys are on or around this on the website, or on the fan list, I guess, the fan composite list, if you will. Notice that a lot of current guys are kind of in this window between the 70s, 60s, and there might be some in the 50s.
Yeah, and you see the kind of gap in where people have ranked them, as high as 16, as low as 99. So I think with the newer guys, you're going to get them probably, in the next 15, 20 picks or so, just because there's that wide variety of opinions.
Right.
But you and I have a similar opinion on the next guy on my list, Scotty.
Interesting. Well, is this your 64? No, you did your 64. Okay. Let's make sure we're focused here, right? It's, let me see. My 63? Is that what's next?
I believe so. Yeah,
okay,
I've got 3 left.
Okay, good. All right. My 63, he's got the same work rate as No, he doesn't have the same work rate as Asuka. But he's one of my favorite guys. He was a solid character. Not the greatest worker, but boy, could he rile a crowd up. My number 63 is the master and the ruler of the world. My number 63 is Sid. And, of course, everyone's like, well, Asuka's better than him. Well, no shit, Sherlock. But obviously we're talking about different things here. This is more of a fan pick. I just love Sid. Always did. Loved him in 92. I was actually pissed when he didn't win the Rumble. It was one of the first times in my wrestling fandom that I hated Hogan because I was pissed. I wanted Sid to win. As much as I'm a huge Flair guy, I wanted Sid to win the 92 Rumble, and I was pissed when he didn't. I didn't like him in 95 because you can't put him in a faction. He's not somebody's muscle. Sid is his own guy, and they just didn't book that right. Sid's not supposed to cower. That's not his way. And I'm watching him now on our Raw refreshes that Justin and I are doing on PlaceToBeNation.com, and I'm watching Sid 96, and he's awesome. The crowd loves him. He's so over. He beats Shawn and Brett back-to-back months and getting cheered. It's incredible. He had the one thing that Sid had. Maybe his promo skills were minimal and his work rate was typical power work rate.
Oh, don't speak ill of the patented whisper yell promo. That is an art form, Scott.
It is an art form. We're live, pal. I agree. However, he just somehow connected with the audience. It was uncanny for me. Uncanny how he connected with an audience for a guy whose promo skills were unusual. How about that? Have you like for a diplomatic answer? Unusual. And work rate was pretty much basic power stuff. And he threw lousy punches. His punching, if this was the top 100 punchers, he'd be like number 965. His punching was terrible. But he had a great power bomb. His other stuff was pretty solid. He sold fairly well. Yeah, he had to be on my list, Brother Nate, at 63.
That's a solid pick, Sid. To me, I always had appreciation for Sid. Sid Vicious, obviously more than Sid Justice, being a WCW fan. But yeah, Sid in the WWF was fun, man. And again, nobody can beat the whisper yell and the flowing mane that Sid brought to the table.
Yes. One of the greatest mullets ever.
It was like a mullet and a perm at the same time.
I know, it was like a malurm. It was a pullet.
A pullet.
I think we just came up with another new thing here on the extension of the main event. All right, Brother Nate, you're 63.
Speaking of extensions, this is an extension of a person you might have mentioned on this very episode.
Ah, okay.
Because the guy I have at number 63 is a five-time WWE Tag Team Champion. The one and only Mike Rotunda.
Okay, pretty good. Not as good as RVD.
Yes.
Not as good as symmetrically as RVD, but this is still pretty good though. Same episode, I'll take it.
Same ballpark.
Yep, absolutely.
And I'll echo a lot of the sentiments you had. Like, this was a guy that was solid in the ring for, like, Mike Rotunda wasn't some cruiserweight. Like, he was a pretty thick dude. I think he was like 6'3", and he probably like about 260, 250, somewhere in that range. Mike Rotunda was pretty solid, but he moved like a guy much smaller than him. And I always thought him and Barry Windham as the U.S. Express was a good team, but then they took it to the next level and took Mike Rotunda from this white meat tag team guy to the villainous Irwin R. Shyster and teamed him up with Ted DiBiase and Money Inc., and it just clicked.
Yep.
And yeah, Irwin R. Shyster, one of the great characters in WWF history, particularly when you talk about, you know, the 90s and where people still had day jobs and side hustles.
Exactly. Side hustles.
I think
if you and I ever join an indie promotion, can that be our tag team name? Side hustles?
Side hustle?
Yes.
I like it. That's
right,
a good name. We could go up against the Street Profits.
Yes! Absolutely.
But no, Irwin R. Shyster, Mike Rotunda, he was great, man. He was somebody that I really enjoyed that character. I think one of my favorite matches ever, just because of the way it was billed, and it actually made me look something up and learn something. And I don't know if you get that often from wrestling where you're taught something. But when Irwin R. Shyster had a match with Ric Flair, and it was billed, Scotty, as the figure 4 versus the W4. And I knew what the figure 4 was, but I didn't know what the hell a W4 was. So I had to look it up and learn some valuable tax information from this pro wrestling program. So yeah, I got to give it up to Mike Rotunda, who was not only second generation himself, but he is also the father of some current WWE performers, yes, and the aforementioned Bray Wyatt and Bo Dallas. So that family's got some good genes in it.
And a member of that family has been reincarnated.
Oh, what if that's the only thing I was missing from going back to the Ultimate Deletion, because my favorite gag on the Impact versions was when the guy would come up as his old gimmick. So I was like, it'd be really funny if he came up as Husky Harris, but it would be even funnier if he popped up dressed like his daddy in the Irwin R. Shyster
That would
outfit.
be fantastic. Or he came up in a Bo Leave t-shirt.
Oh.
WWE would never be that snarky. But anyway, as I can't say anything bad. We've already heard my comments on Mike Rotunda, so I won't repeat. But good pick. Great pick, Nate. Good he's on our same episode. I like that. All right. PlacementNation.com's fan ballot, or the composite, number 63. This might be a guy that we'll see later on, maybe. Depends on how you're feeling. I think he was number 3 on Jordan Duncan's list. This guy was on 85 ballots. He was as low as 100. He was as high as 10 on some people's lists. That's gotta be Kane.
Wow.
Kane.
Future mayor.
Future mayor, who we saw yet again maybe going to WrestleMania. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. All right. So, PlacementNation.com's fan list number 63 was Kane. All right, Brother Nate, the floor is yours. Your number 62.
All right, at 63, I had Mike Rotunda, who comes from a wrestling family, and my number 62 also comes from a wrestling family. So I don't know, maybe I'm feeling like Vin Diesel tonight. It's all about family. Because my guy at number 62 was a key cog in the rock and wrestling era. And he's the father of a rattlesnake. He is Cowboy Bob Orton.
Ah! Actually, a viper. You threw me off for a minute. Wrong snake. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is.
You never know. Bob Orton was doing a lot of things on the road back then. Have we ever gotten a DNA test from Stone Cold?
That is true.
Maybe that's the reason they had that feud with him and Orton.
Bob Orton is the father of many snakes. Anyway, no, I love that. I love that pick. I love Ace. I love Ace.
To me, again, going back to being like, of course you're going to think about Hogan and Piper and Mr. T when you think about that rock and wrestling era, but Bob Orton was always there. He was always the sidekick. He was always the side piece, if you will, Scotty. And, everybody can't be the star, but he knew how to play his role and just get under your skin if you're a fan of Hogan and the good guys. He's somebody that I think doesn't get a lot of credit for being smooth in the ring. Like, he wasn't some technical wizard, but everything he did looked effective, and he transitioned from move to move very efficiently. So I got to give him credit for that. He had some really strong matches against guys like Tito and Snuka back in the day, and I met the guy once at an autograph signing. So I've always had love for Cowboy Bob Orton and the ubiquitous cast.
Well, the cast is tremendous. I like that pick. We'll see if he's on my list. He might be a little further up. We'll see. I like Cowboy Bob, and I met him once. I actually met him twice, and he's a cool guy, very cool guy.
Yeah.
And obviously second generation. Obviously his dad, and of course Randall Kay is his son. All right, my number 62.
And perhaps Stone Cold Steve Austin.
He might be. Maybe. And maybe he's Jake the Snakes. No, he's not.
He's fathered all the snakes.
He's fathered all the snakes. Well, Bob Orton probably be a better father than fucking Grizzly was, so maybe Jake wishes he Bob was.
He's Kobe's dad. The Black Mamba.
The Black Mamba. I love Kobe.
Jake Plummer.
Bob Orton. Yes. Yes. Ken Stabler. Oh my God. We could go on all night with this. It's
Cowboy got it in.
Another main event special. Lizard nicknames. Anyway, all right. My number 62. Similar. Let's put it this way, brother Nate. Similar argument to 64. However, again, same case. And I believe she's my highest female. To me, at this point, she is the best women's wrestler ever for me. And it is going to be an honor to see my top two women on my list face each other April 8th in New Orleans. My number 64, or 62, sorry. My number 62 is one that we just mentioned earlier on the Place to Be Nation list, Charlotte. Charlotte is the perfect composite women's wrestler, in my opinion. And to me, she's just a tick above Asuka for me. But they're both equally great to me.
Yeah.
And Charlotte, fortunately, she didn't take all of her dad's habits, like marrying 80 times and being an alcoholic. But and trust me, I love Rick to death. Because I'll be honest with you, Brother Nate, I'll say it now. I won't even wait till the episode number, our 10th, the last part of our series. If this was top 100 greatest ever, he was my number one.
Yeah.
It would have been Flair for me. Anyway, I just wanted to say that.
I think a lot of people would share that sentiment.
Yeah. So, but we already mentioned he's already been on my list. So, for WWE, because obviously more of his time was elsewhere. But Charlotte, she has that aura about her. And I feel like people are going to say this, and I don't think it's meant to be xenophobic in any way, or not xenophobic. I don't want to say racist because it's not that strong. I'm not saying it because of the ethnicities, but many consider that this might be the beginning of Charlotte versus Asuka, a women's version of Flair versus Steamboat. Would I like to see that? Hell yeah. I don't want this to be the only time I see these two wrestle. So I think what you're going to see April 8th is the start of something very, very special, in my opinion. But Charlotte, to me, is the perfect women's wrestler. She has that gravitas, both as a heel and a face. Her entrance, she stole it right from her dad's playbook. The beautiful robes, the going very slowly, letting the fireworks go off and everything, just taking it in, taking her time. building to the moment. And again, that's genes. That's genes. We know that, obviously. And she's learned to adopt it very well. And if you asked me, Brother Nate, if there was any women's wrestler in the history of WWE better than Charlotte, I can't give you an answer, in my opinion. Now, some may differ. Some may think Alundra Blaze or, even some women today like Sasha or somebody. Nah, for me, the top two women in the company now, and maybe the top two women of all time, are Charlotte and Asuka. But Charlotte gets nut for me by a hair, and she's my 62.
That's a good pick. Yeah, obviously I had Charlotte a little bit lower than you, but I certainly think she's in the discussion. She's not my number one WWF/WWE women's wrestler of all time, but we'll get to that as the list continues to get towards the top.
Okay.
But yeah, I think the crazy thing is, you're talking about people talking about this feud with Asuka might turn out to be her Ricky Steamboat. I think she's already had her Ricky Steamboat, and that's Sasha Banks.
Sasha Banks, good point.
So it's like she could have two Steamboats, which is great because not only she had this great feud with Sasha, she made Bayley feel relevant on the main roster. I still think there's a feud with Becky Lynch to be told down the line, and this Asuka thing, if they go out there and let them do what they're capable of doing, I think it'll be one of the best WrestleMania women's matches ever.
I almost think that Sasha was a flare to Bayley's Dusty in NXT. So Sasha, I think, has been. I'll give her credit in that aspect. She's good at both. But I like that. I like that comparison, Brother Nate. I like that.
And I can't take credit for it because Rick, if you ever watched that ride along with Rick and Charlotte, one of the most awkward ride alongs ever.
Yes.
The only good thing from that ride along was Rick comparing the girls on NXT to his foes, and he was like, Sasha's your Steamboat, but Bayley's your Sting. And Bayley could have been her Sting if they didn't screw her up on the main roster, but that's another topic for another day, Scott.
Right. Yes, it is another discussion for another day. All right. Let's see. You did your 62. You did your 62. All right.
Yep.
So Place to Be Nation 62 is a guy that we've already talked about tonight. I won't say which one of us did, but he's already been discussed tonight. He was on 81 ballots. He was as low as 96, as high as 11. And the picture that we have on the website of him is a match that I had talked about. And that is your inaugural Intercontinental Champion, Pat Patterson. And the picture on the site is your boy Sergeant Slaughter getting whipped by Pat Patterson with a belt. So there you go. So there's your number 62 on the PlaceBeNation.com fan composite list. All right. I believe I am concluding my 10 with my number 61. And my 61 was a very controversial pick when he made it to the WWE Hall of Fame. And now everyone says, well, if this guy got in, then anybody could get in. But here's another guy that's a glue guy from the Federation era. He was a great worker. He cut great promos. He had a lot of charisma. He won a few big matches and then was good at putting other guys over. My number 61, the Birdman. Coco Beware. Coco was one of those guys, again, kind of like Mike Rotundo, a glue guy, great worker in the ring. Was needed during an era when we needed to have solid guys in the mid-card. He won matches, he lost matches, but he had great charisma, connected with the fans, cut good promos. Energy. Come on, Frankie! And it was he was just a great guy to have on the roster at that time. And he was a great worker in the ring. And again, great charisma, cut good promos, solid glue guy during the Federation era for me, Brother Nate. Love Coco.
Obviously, I have love for the Birdman, so yes. I'm glad to hear that he made your list, Scotty. And I like that we've had a theme tonight. Two themes actually: glue guys, and also generational guys, family guys. And my last guy on my list kind of combines both of them.
Okay.
He was a glue guy. He was a perennial guy who, when he wasn't in a tag team, he was somebody you could find in the mid card, and he always made people look good. And he's also somebody who's a family guy because he is the father of one of Scotty's current favorite wrestlers on the roster, and that is the one and only Jim the Anvil Neidhart.
Really? Wow. Interesting.
Jim the Anvil Neidhart, of course, 2-time tag team champion. But for me, man, he had one of the greatest runs in a tag team. Like, obviously we're going to talk about tag teams down the road, Scotty. But I'm just going to, already kind of show some of my cards. Make the argument the Hart Foundation is the best tag team in the history of this company.
Absolutely. And that's a debate we will discuss throughout 2018, if you get my drift.
Yep. And when I was at my kind of entry into my WWE fandom, which would have been the shows on USA on Sunday morning, like when I first kind of opened my eyes to this other product that, I'd seen bits and pieces here and there, and, I'd watch the cartoon or I'd watch Saturday Night's Main Event, but I was primarily an NWA fan back in the day. But when I finally started, getting to the cable era of the WWF, the Hart Foundation was the team that jumped off the screen. Mm-hmm. Not only did they have the cool outfits and the shades and Mouth of the South Jimmy Hart, who is great in his own right, but you had a tag team that complemented each other. And I think that is something that always makes for an effective team. You had Bret, this technical wizard, and then you had just this power guy that just was built like a third string fullback, but he'd get in there and do work. And then to me, like, Anvil was somebody that worked well in the tag team, but he was great as kind of the enforcer in the stable. And one of my favorite angles was when we had Bret as the Canadian hero, but the American villain. And I loved everything that Hart Foundation did. When you had, Pillman and Anvil and those guys. So to me, Jim the Anvil Neidhart is a guy that worked for me back then, and I still go on the network and look at his matches, and they still work today. And he's an underrated promo. Like, he's no Ric Flair, but he had some charisma. So that's why Jim the Anvil Neidhart closes out my list this week at number 61, Scotty.
I'm a little surprised, but he does deserve credit for being the power guy on arguably one of the 2 or 3 greatest tag teams of all time. Okay, interesting.
And him and Owen made a pretty good team after they split up him and Bret.
Yeah, probably. I mean, they had the awesome, baggy MC Hammer pants. They looked odd on Anvil, but maybe they were falling off his gut. But I don't know, maybe. But and he was who? He was who in the match.
Oh yes,
so.
Yes.
All right. And finally, the number 61 on the PlaceToBeNation.com composite list. This guy was on 101 ballots, so only 17 people didn't put this guy on their list. He was as low as 97, as high as 25. Yokozuna. So, we'll see if I have Yokozuna higher on the list. So, all right. Let us quickly recap. We won't recap the website list. You could see that on the website. All right. Just to recap, my 70 to 61, Big Boss Man, Pat Patterson, Superstar Billy Graham, Mike Rotundo / IRS, Jeff Jarrett, Ricky Steamboat, Asuka, Sid, Charlotte, and Coco Beware.
All right. And I had William Regal, Dean Ambrose, Haystacks Calhoun, Sean Waltman, a.k.a. X-Pac, Sergeant Slaughter, Bobby Lashley, Woken Matt Hardy, Mike Rotundo / IRS, Cowboy Bob Orton Jr., and, of course, Natalia's daddy, Jim the Anvil Neidhart.
All right. So there we go. We hope you enjoyed part 4 of our 10-part series breaking down our top 100 GWWE of all time, superstars. Go to PlaceToBeNation.com for everything involving the GWWE. list superstars, both written and podcast, not just myself and Brother Nate, but JR and Aaron George doing their Made the Cut, and a few others have done podcasts, and of course all the written stuff we did as well. And get ready, because the announcement has been made that we, for 2018, we are researching, and then we'll do podcasts in 2019, to count down the 100 greatest tag teams in WWE history. And it's funny, Brother Nate, that we were just talking about one that will probably be on almost everybody's top 5, maybe even one, and that's the Hart Foundation. But that's another discussion for another day. We hope you enjoyed this. We'll be back again with our next installment. For Brother Nate, I'm Brother Scott. 40 down, 60 to go. Stay tuned.
They don't tell